Our customers should be seeing us every day digitally, not once a year at the trade show. Executives at our company post on LinkedIn. We run proper media against connected TV and LinkedIn cold and retargeting on Instagram and Meta. And maybe we throw in YouTube if our audience is there. We have an organic distribution strategy that we go through email and through a podcast. Our YouTube Shorts videos show up in Google search. We produce customer stories on our website that people might search and find, or our customers might share. And our target market sees us every fucking day instead of once a year at the trade show. So first off, just wanted to provide a little bit of an announcement. Some of you might have seen the LinkedIn post yesterday, but I've formalized a partnership and become a shareholder with a company called CS2, a leading marketing operations and revenue operations firm based in California. I have been working with them for the past 2 years as we think about this idea of needing the right data and pipeline architecture in order to create great analytics and be able to measure the right things and be able to forecast and plan accurately, and then be able to flag if programs or investments are really not performing and be able to have all of that in place. That the core architecture inside of your CRM is the driving force to making a lot of those things happen. And CS2 is a leading firm that's been paving the way on that type of stuff, doing great work for companies like Drata and Gong and G2. So that partnership has been formal and hopefully creates a lot of value for them, and also opens up some opportunities for deeper integration and collaboration in the future. So stay tuned for more on that. But to me now, like marketing ops and I don't even like calling it that, creating the right data architecture inside of your CRM to be able to measure, track, report, diagnose, and forecast is just not, it's not optional anymore. And we need to be placing a ton of process and stuff around that. And I think they're really paving the way there. So excited for that. Just wanted to share that with everyone. Nice win for me and for them and all of the companies that participate in this ecosystem that we're building. And now just to get into some of the details of my thoughts, we've been focusing a lot on different motions so far in some of the latest episodes. PLG, we did some stuff on like sales outreach, focused on different moves like that. Partner was one of them. And today I'm going to sort of zoom out. There's been some things that I've been seeing that I just want to kind of talk through my own perspective on it as I see it, which is related to benchmarking. And so it came up today in a post, but I've actually seen this and had this thought for quite some time now, where somebody was posting benchmarks about like what is your average CAC payback depending on your ACV. And it was like, if you're 5K ACV, then it's an 8-month CAC payback. And if you're 10K ACV, then it's an 11-month CAC payback. And if you're greater than 25K ACV, it's a 17-month CAC payback. And as I looked in that data, I was like, well, I've analyzed 40 companies' data in the past 9 months, getting their actual financial data and their actual opportunity and sales data out of Salesforce. And there's not a single fucking company that has hit any of those benchmarks with their ACV. Not even close. And the reason is because those benchmarks are created by running a survey to people and asking them, what is your CAC payback period? And then they just get to put in a number. Maybe they don't even look at the data. Maybe they don't make the calculations. Maybe they calculate it based on marketing sourced revenue instead of all revenue or sales sourced revenue. Or then they bring attribution into it. And point blank, you are not able to replicate these types of benchmarks when you have different terminology, self-reported data, not a third party looking at it and things like that. And so it's just a word of caution that most of the benchmarks that I see right now are incredibly different than the things that I see inside of actual companies looking at actual data. And so just a word of caution there, that I think that a lot of the benchmarks created do not look at the data in the same way. It relies on like the data that's being pulled out to actually be standardized and correct. And gosh, like asking someone what their CAC payback period is, or asking them a question like that, and then using that as like the core input to how you create benchmarks, I think is just wildly inaccurate today and potentially very misleading. So that's out there. Another point on that is when you start to bring in things like a W-shaped model, or having some attribution vendor report on it, or whether it was marketing sourced or sales sourced, all of those other nuances make it basically impossible for you to compare apples to apples from your company to another company, because no companies are doing this the same. I am sure about that. The data is different, how they collect it is different, what properties they call it is different, how inconsistently they collect it, whether it's automated or manual. There's no real standardization inside of it to create real benchmarks. So that's just something that I'm seeing that I want people to be aware of. Another question that continues to come up, whether we think about it as from a benchmarks perspective or any other way, of like, I got a question in from LinkedIn today. Hey, Chris, how much of our, pipeline should be marketing sourced versus sales sourced? What's the benchmark for that? And my message back to them is that it's not about marketing sourced and sales sourced when you're in an integrated go-to-market team. That marketing and sales and SDRs and customer success and the growth team are all working toward the same goal of getting a bunch of customers, and trying to say that sales did that and marketing did that is just it's nonsense that does not help any of the teams do anything. And it's only used because it's very easy in the old way of thinking to say marketing spent that much and did that much for us. SDR spent that much and did that much for us. Meanwhile, having the teams compete against one another versus working together. And so I think the entire framework of thinking about it as marketing sourced and SDR sourced and sales sourced, and then trying to elevate that to create benchmarks about where you should be, I think we need an entirely different view of what we should be looking at. Now, potentially a better question could be what's the benchmark for how much pipeline and revenue a website produces for a company? And I think that is a very interesting case, because the website, like a lot of people like to attach the website is, since it's a marketing asset, if it comes through marketing, we're going to say that it was marketing sourced since it came through the website. And in reality, the website is a business asset that funnels all of the demand through one place. Every company that buys from you is going to go to the website. It's helping all deals. It's influencing all deals. And so to say that it was marketing sourced, I think it just creates, again, sort of a misleading view. And so what we've suggested, and we put forward the pipeline sources framework multiple years ago, and now Sydney's doing some awesome work on iterating that to even further advance it away from this departmental level siloed structure, and focus it purely on, when we are looking to capture in-market buyers, where are the paths that they're taking that become revenue, and take the departments out of it and become agnostic around that. I'm hopeful that we'll have some stuff to present even as early as next week for people that show up live, to be able to show the way that we're really thinking about this, and the dynamic, instead of the assembly line of marketing gets leads and SDRs follow up and things like this. How do we work as an all-bound integrated revenue team where the entire view of what we're looking at is not siloed by departments? I think it would be a massive leap forward for companies. And we've had such great discussion. I'd love to sort of cut the talk a little bit early today and get into some discussion. This can be a wide open episode. Nathan, what's up? Good to have you here. It's gonna be a wide open discussion. So if there's things related to benchmarks or that type of data, would love to discuss that. If we want to talk ops or tactical stuff, I'm happy to go in whatever direction. And then feel free, it doesn't have to just be questions. If you all have an interesting observation or something you've been trying, I'd love to hear about that stuff too. And I'm sure many other people would too. Thanks everyone for being here. Let's do it.
All right. I'm going to bring on Ryan. He's walking very fast on his desk right now, but he has a really good observation that he dropped in the chat that I thought would be valuable.
Thank you, Sydney. It's casual pace. Don't want to be out of breath when I'm talking, but no, I thought it was a great point, Chris. Just last week, I came across an SRA mention. It was a direct traffic conversion. SRA mentioned email, and I was like, oh, are they doing a lot of email? Are they newsletter, what have you? Go into the rep activity and found about 20 touches from a BDR, emailing this prospect and getting them in the funnel, and just reinforced this idea that website can collect conversions that marketing is doing as well as sales is doing. So great call out there.
Yeah, it's so important to recognize that outbound sequences, like if I get an outbound cadence and it's actually I actually open it and read it and it's actually interested in me, the first thing I'm going to do is not reply to the email. I'm going to go to their website. And so recognizing that these things need to be working together and we need to be able to look at them and not have to try to just say, like, try to have an absolute of like, it was this or this. I think can be highly productive. And then whatever we can do to try and take the departmental level stuff out of it, it's just not the way we should be looking at investment analytics anymore. Marketing spent this, and then we can try and categorize what marketing sourced or influenced. I think is just an outdated way to scrutinize the investments made by marketing and other go-to-market departments.
So to piggyback on that, if we're not looking at departmental, ROI type of calculations, any tips that you'd give to start measuring a more holistic, integrated ROI calculation?
So number one is implementing a pipeline sources framework. So to take the departments out of it and then categorize it based on where the actual source of the signal came from, your website, events, partner, contact level, like scoring or data, account level scoring or data, and have those types of categories, recognizing that in any of those categories that sales or SDRs will be doing outreach and touches to all of them. And so it's just, where is the source of the signal that's then driving the sales team's action? And then did that convert to pipeline? And can we aggregate those into groups that are agnostic to the department? It's crazy that companies will take all of their digital spend and then compare the digital spend against the website revenue. I popularized that many years ago because it was an easy way to look at it. But at this point now, like, it's just the digital work that you do impacts all the other stuff. It makes your in-person events work better. It makes your outreach work better. And so why would we measure the impact of all of our digital spend, especially we spend a lot on advertising, just against what the website converted? I think you're just really selling yourself short. And so to flip the model, specifically in marketing, to break the investments into 4 separate categories. We have investments to create demand. We have investments to capture intent of in-market buyers. We have investments to convert active pipeline or accelerate sales velocity. And we have investments to expand and retain accounts. And when you make an investment, you make a binary choice of what is the primary purpose of this investment, and then you put it in that category. And so if you are measuring how are we capturing intent of in-market buyers, then you would use the signal, and then you would look at basically what was the signal, and then what prompted sales to reach out, what was the outcome of that. And then you have a direct ROI spend for like Google or, intent data or review sites or any other type of performance marketing. Most B2B companies spend all their budget there, which is why they spend all their budget there because they only measure marketing that way. And then if you look at all the other categories, so if you look at the expenses to convert pipeline, there's so many amazing things that B2B companies could do to work the 100 or 1,000 active deals that they have in pipeline and deploy a small amount of marketing dollars to those small amount of people and accounts to make a big impact against those accounts in closing. But in most B2B measurement models, marketing is not measured that way, and they're not incentivized to spend money there. So they spend 2%, 3% of the budget on converting active pipeline, which would be the quickest, most impactful way to make an impact on revenue from a marketing investment standpoint. Then you look at what is the investment that we use to create demand? And most B2B companies, and we have our customers actually self-categorize. So they go through this process. We're not doing it for them, and they categorize their investments. And most companies don't spend more than 5 or 10% max on demand creation. And the things that go in there, some throwaway PR agency expense, some $50,000 a month on Gartner or Forrester or something like that, and just like a brand survey and some things like that. Using marketing dollars to expand current customers and to drive up NRR and to drive cross-sell. It is a small group of customers that already use your product that, if marketed to appropriately, might be able to expand and move. And we just need to be able to create measurement strategies and the incentive structure for marketing to deploy investments in a balanced way across all of those core objectives, which right now doesn't happen at all because of how the investments are scrutinized and measured. And that's why you see 85, 90% of the budget go to Google performance marketing any other tactic that gets measured by digital touchpoint based attribution. And at some point, because I basically have been screaming this on the top of the hills for like 4 or 5 years now, that at some point, people are going to start to get it. And I recognize that. I have a lot of people that are coming in and recognizing this is a problem finally now. You cannot spend 90% of your budget on Google and SEM and lead gen as a marketing organization. You just can't. It's just so inefficient for sales, and it's like very low productivity, and you don't cover the whole customer life cycle. And you do most often the go-to-market team a huge disservice by measuring and forcing marketing to play within that sandbox. So we'll get there soon, but I think that changing the way that the investments are scrutinized and not saying it's by a department, and instead of changing it from the department, changing it to the objective of the investment, we're still going to have departmental level budgets. This isn't going to change. We're not going to change it. But when we look at the analytics and use it to make decisions, we're going to look at it differently. It's my hope and prediction here.
Awesome. I'm going to bring on Danielle. She had a question that got a lot of upvotes in the chat.
Hey, Chris, thanks. So this was a topic that really attracted me to your videos on LinkedIn because I just felt it where I was like, we need to stop, categorizing what's marketing, what's sales. And we need to look at this a little more holistically. And I was part of an organization that didn't really see that. They were just like, no, it's marketing or it's sales. And I kept trying to drive the bridge and show this is how I'm an ally and this is how we're working together and this is how it's going to change the company. I did a lot of the things that, again, hadn't come across your content, but focused on thought leadership. I was the first marketing hire and ended up completely driving brand awareness where we were getting inbound deals. Then my boss came to me and said, hey, I want to be able to see how I can prove that what you're doing is working, even though coming off the biggest sales year ever from Google searches and, people were just coming to us. And so I put together the thing that you have on Refine Labs with the revenue analysis. And I said, this is how we're going to start analyzing what marketing is doing, what sales is doing, and how it works together. And I ended up getting laid off. The sales VP got promoted to oversee VP or the VP of revenue. So now he's overseeing marketing and sales. And he came to me, he's like, I don't know anything about marketing. I can't actually do this. So it's just kind of that's a whole life story there, that a sidebar, but I think I'm seeing this conversation happen a lot on LinkedIn where sales kind of gets that, the oversees the revenue role. And also we're still battling this, the C-suite doesn't get this. We need to stop, comparing what marketing is doing and what sales is doing and see it holistically.
Yeah. Putting a chief revenue officer in charge of marketing who has never practiced marketing before is like putting me in charge of your legal department. Probably it's what it is. Or it's like putting your CFO in charge of your engineering team. It's like why it's like an entirely different profession. And because they both are used to augment or, drive revenue, that they think that one or the other could do it. The same thing for marketing leaders that have never sold stuff. And most marketers that are in that situation are self-aware enough to know that they couldn't run sales. But from the other way around, because B2B companies are so sales heavy and so historically just like sales led organizations, that for some reason they think their chief revenue officer, because they carried the bag, is going to know how to run marketing too. I've pushed against this since 2019 because I saw the chief revenue officer taking over marketing as early as 2019, as you fire your VP of marketing and try and consolidate the departments, and just watch that person have no idea how to run marketing. And then to deploy most of the investments to scale SDR headcount and to not invest in marketing because that's what they know what to do. And then watch the company start to fall behind. And then eventually that person gets fired 2 years later for being in charge of something they should have never been in charge of in the first place. And so your story is not uncommon. It like happened to me in some ways. Like I got asked to resign in 2019 as I tried to bring a company aligned with a lot of the things that I talk about now that weren't so popular or well known back in 2019. Most companies that are trying to fix this are trying to fix it with ABM or ABX or ABE or whatever they call it, right? And they'll try it, but they'll run it in a little silo. They won't make an organizational wide adoption of account-based integrated go-to-market strategy. They'll just have it in the corner, and then ABM will then compete with their event strategy and compete with their outbound strategy instead of recognizing that outbound and events and the website are all part of an account-based integrated strategy. And so I think the companies that are at least trying to go in that direction are ones that are worth exploring as a employee of working there, because they're at least thinking in that direction. If it's not just a marketing pet project and it's actually kind of real. And then what they're going to find as they get down there is that the old way of setting up your CRM and measuring data and running attribution totally breaks when you actually run an ABX, ABE strategy. That the demand waterfall and the cross-object reporting and all these, touch point customer journey things and how those get collected just break down more or less. And so this will continue to happen. This is not something that just because I come on here and talk about it on the podcast, companies will still try to consolidate the marketing and sales under one person, which is 99% of the time a sales leader who's never done marketing, and they'll scrape their knees, and eventually people will look at it and say, hey, we tried a bunch of these things and it didn't work. We're not going to try it again. But those cycles take half decades or more to actually play themselves out.
All right. Great question. We are going to go to Nancy next. And then we got David coming up.
Nice.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I look like a wreck, so I'm not going to.
Oh, Nancy, I'm sure you're looking great, but it's all good.
But I'm sending you positive energy.
Thank you.
Okay. So I was listening to Alice DeCourcy's podcast. Super interesting. You introduced her last week. So I'm listening to her diary of first-time CMO. And what I found really interesting was in her case, she specifically mentioned Cognizant has a MDR, SDR structure. So the first point is I'm not familiar with the MDR structure. But more interestingly, their promotion path is SDR to MDR to AE. Usually I'm used to SDR to AE, right? Bypassing the MDR part. So I was just wondering if you can speak to either Cognizant, because you know them well, or just in general. When have you seen companies needing this three-tier approach to sales? And even though I read her blog, I still couldn't quite understand what does a MDR do fundamentally that's different than what a SDR do. And the last question would be, when you have seen companies having this kind of structure, what have you seen as the ratio of SDRs to MDRs to AEs?
Great questions, Nancy. Let's unpack it. So first off, just a little disclaimer, I don't know the ins and outs of Cognizant's business or their promotion paths or a lot of that stuff. So some of this is going to be my educated understanding about what they're doing and trying to communicate it to answer your question, but that's just a hedge.
Sure.
So many companies attempt to break SDRs into inbound and outbound. And that's effectively what they're doing here, where the MDR is basically an inbound rep. Maybe they have the autonomy to close deals that are less than X $1,000 a year. And then they're basically playing inbound SDR for all the other deals, while the SDR is banging the phone on cold leads. Yeah, that's what a lot of companies try. It might be their situation. I'm not 100% sure.
So just to riff a little bit on that, I think they used an example like ebooks, right? So they push out their ebooks and there's people downloading. So that then becomes an inbound lead. right? And so they assigned their MDRs to follow up on those who downloaded the ebook to see if they really have interest in, or their job is to educate more. So maybe an ebook alone is not enough, but a MDR certainly would know all the available collateral and what else to offer the prospect to nurture them along to the point that they might be ready for sales. I get that. But
that's kind of conventional wisdom, but I don't necessarily agree with that strategy. But either way, please continue.
Okay, so that's fine. So I kind of get what an MDR does. But then you have the SDR. Are we implying when companies have MDRs versus SDRs, they nevertheless expect the SDRs to do social selling, go after the ICPs, use Sales Navigator, and forget about whether they downloaded the ebook or not. No, their job is just to, based on the ICP and target persona, craft these messages and do true cold call outbound. For example, using Sales Navigator. Would you see that as the distinction?
Like perhaps that's what they're after, but as I alluded to, I don't agree with this distinction because based on actual performance data, somebody that downloaded your ebook converts to revenue about the same as a cold lead that you pull from ZoomInfo. We should be, instead of trying to say these people are inbound because they came from marketing and these people are outbound because sales just called them, instead of trying to subjectively decide what bucket they fit into, why don't we use data? Why don't we use data to understand these are the signals that buyers send us where we convert a lot of revenue, and these are the signals that buyers send us where our conversion rates are terrible, our win rates are low, et cetera, et cetera. And then we take out this distinction of here's the marketing signals and here are the sales signals, and we look at it as a holistic team. And then I've mentioned this before, but I really, really, really am pushing companies to think about this. You have two buckets of people. You have hand raisers, qualified hand raisers, and then you have every other signal. And for qualified hand raisers, your job should be to have the best possible buying experience with the most experienced people and give your best, most qualified, most ready to buy customers to your most talented, most successful reps that close the most deals, have the highest win rates, are most customer focused, and feed your best reps all of the best deals. And then that's my one man's perspective. Many people would disagree with that. And then you have the other 95% of signals, which is ebook, account intent data, G2 intent data, cold list pull, webinar attendee, webinar registration, newsletter sign up, products PQL signal, and you got all the other signals. And then you have a team of people that are responsible for trying to recognize that intent and then convert that intent into a meeting and an opportunity.
Saying the latter doesn't make sense. You think having a body of people, whether they're called MDRs or not, trying to get all your webinar leads and ebook leads, your experiences, honestly, they don't convert that well. Is that what you're saying?
To me, the data is the data. Like an ebook download converts at 0.1%. You have to make 1,000 touches to get one opportunity that's going to close. And it's basically like throwing paint against the wall or throwing stuff against the wall and hoping that it sticks. So like just based on statistics, eventually if you do enough things and you create enough touch points, you'll get one deal. Somebody will buy, even if it's not what you did that caused them to buy. And so to me, it's really the distinction of when they say inbound and outbound, what they really mean is marketing and sales. That distinction against the departments is the entire root issue. Catch you later, Nathan. Is the entire root issue in B2B go-to-market to silo the departments and then try and scrutinize the budget and do the analytics differently. And that is the root cause in B2B go-to-market today. So whenever I hear the term inbound and outbound, I'm trying to communicate to people what it really means is marketing versus sales. And if you acknowledge that that is actually a core issue inside of your go-to-market, that if you want to operate like an integrated go-to-market team where all the teams work together, that you must lose that mindset and distinction. I just don't believe in having two different teams where one team calls marketing leads and the other team calls sales leads. I just think it just doesn't make sense to me.
All right.
Yeah, that was an awesome discussion, Nancy. Keep digging and let me know what else you find, because I'm sure you'll ask that question to a couple other people, or maybe you'll be able to contact Alice directly. Would love to I'm kind of just making some assumptions around what they're doing and providing my perspective, but we'd love to know what you learn as you keep going through it.
All right. We're going to bring up David next.
Hi. I'm not sure if this is even going to be possible to answer, but I'll ask it nevertheless, okay? And perhaps Sydney and Tori and Ryan and Matthew would all have perspectives on this as well. If you think about the last 4 years, or maybe 5, right, since you've been more publicly doing this, are you seeing any shifts in what you're seeing as you evaluate and assess companies, in what they're doing in revenue processes? And if yes, what's creeping in and what's fading away? And if no, I suppose you've got a good long future ahead of you. So that's my question. Has anything really changed much that you can observe? I mean, I know you're going to see a certain sample of types of companies, I suppose, but if you're able to somehow kind of meta it all out, have you seen a shift?
Yeah, I would love to hear other people as well, but I'll share my perspective first. I think that there's a lot more people that at least buy into the concept between lead gen and demand gen. So I think that has shifted quite a bit. Are a lot of companies putting it into practice? No, they're stuck in the handcuffs of the metrics and attribution that they measure, but at least people are recognizing that there's a distinction here where 5 years ago they didn't even think that. Another core trend is that companies are moving from a sourced model to an influenced model as a way to scrutinize investments, particularly in marketing. And what that has led to is ridiculously bloated go-to-market costs. So now instead of one program and taking credit for $1, now you can have 5 different line items that all take credit for the same dollar. So you spend 5 times more and you get the same dollar at the end. And it's just the analytics have just led to massive bloat in the investments and the headcount and everything that happens in go-to-market. I think that we're starting to see the beginning of a majority of companies thinking a lot differently around profitability and cost of acquisition, where like literally nobody thought about it in 2021. When you have a 100x revenue multiple, it doesn't matter if it costs you a lot to get a customer and they only stay for 18 months. You're just going to be able to raise the next round. And so that type of stuff is putting pressure on it. In terms of the advertising mix, maybe companies use a couple of experimental channels. But most of the money's going to Google, and then a portion of it goes to LinkedIn, and that's it from an advertising perspective. I think that companies have bought a ton of technology. Some companies are trying to unwind this right now, but basically have like way too much stuff and a lot of underutilization and low ROI on technology investments through the boom of 2020 to 2022. So I think that will start to unwind itself. Companies, the way that they think about the importance of data has moved forward. So most companies recognize like, yeah, I need data to make good decisions. But how they actually collect the data does not lead to having the right data to make good decisions. And so people recognize it as important, but don't have a clear, repeatable solution for many companies to actually do it. Something that we're working on at my company, Paceto. Yeah, to me, those are some of like the broad strokes, but like it kind of like you said, like if people don't have this figured out, it means that like, I'll have a prosperous future. To me, it's almost like 1,000 paper cuts at a time to just continue to see a handful of companies and people do it and have tons of success, and then 99.9% of the market do nothing. It's just like painful to me, actually. So maybe it'll be prosperous, but it won't be. To me, it feels so clear that there's like issues that need to be solved. And I'm just wondering at what point, the stuff washes out to where companies have to start to make these decisions. We still do analyses today where most of the marketing dollars get spent and have a 60-month or more CAC payback period. So when you think about the entire go-to-market cost and what the CFO is seeing, like, even if they don't care about marketing source and sales source, they're just looking at sales and go-to-market spend against total net new revenue acquired, and just look at that ratio, that they have to know that they're like very bloated and highly inefficient. And so I think at some point companies, most other companies, by the way, have this figured out. You don't see the stuff that happens in tech and SaaS in a lot of other, maybe fintech, but you don't see it in a lot of other industries that don't have so much VC pouring in. Manufacturing, med tech, other places like that. tend to be have a different level of like fiscal responsibility. I think part of it is the gross margin. I think part of it is the space that they're in and the tribe that comes along with it. But this is not to me, this is not a B2B issue. It's really a tech and SaaS issue when it comes to the bloat and the inefficiency. Most other companies are able to manage that through like finance and basic FP&A.
Okay, all right, I like that. Or rather, I agree with that, especially the comment about tech and SaaS companies receiving a lot of VC cash. And in defense, if you will, somewhat, and I find myself surprised that I'm saying this, tech and SaaS space evolves so quickly compared to some other industries that this push to go big or go home to somehow make a mark drives it. Because if you get your 18 to 24 month window while your tech is new and viable to get sticky. So I can understand why that happens. Okay.
It's going to wash. I just got to get this comment in because I want to have this on the record. It will take a long time to wash out. And I don't know what the exact number is, but my guess is 90 to 95% of VCs are entirely underwater with massive unrealized losses. Okay. What an unrealized loss means is that they invested at a company at $100 million valuation, and now that company is worth $30 million. So their investment is down 70%. And you don't actually realize the loss until the company exits and you have to actually sell and the transaction happens. So right now, it's just sitting on the balance sheet as an unrealized loss, and they haven't lost it yet. And it's going to take the 3, 5, 7, 10 years for all the companies in their portfolio to flame out and die, to sell for pennies on the dollar, to sell for a 1-to-1 investment with like basically no ROI. And then maybe you have one in there that gets a 10 or 100x return, but most VCs aren't going to have that one. And so my prediction, my thinking on this is that the way that like you could see it in 2021, everyone was a VC. All of a sudden, people that have never invested in a company, have never operated a company, are now going to go out and be a venture capitalist and take someone else's money and do something they've never done before and lose their money. And you can see when spaces get very hot like that, there's a lot of people that haven't done it before that eventually that stuff washes out. NFTs is a great example of that. Not to compare NFTs with VCs, but NFTs is a good example of that. And not to say that the blockchain technology is not valuable, but that part of it like definitely was oversaturated. And so I think it'll be, OpenView closing, OpenView, the VC that evangelizes PLG, and a lot of things that they did I really liked, but my assumption, my estimate of what happened there is they had a ton of unrealized losses on the books from their PLG companies that burned so much fucking money to try and grow, that they basically said, there's no way that we're going to be able to return. We might as well, I don't know the details, but that's sort of my assumption. And I think a lot of other VC, I saw another, because my friend Chuck will send me a news update every once in a while, and we're going to start to see VC firms close their doors from starting now all the way through 2026, 2027, as it takes time for those companies, the outcomes of those companies to actually happen.
It's interesting. Well, you put the marker in. We'll come back and see how this has turned out in a couple of years.
I do love recording everything, so we can do that.
That's true. So I guess the one big change that I've seen is that there's more of an acceptance or a requirement now for marketing to own a number, to have a number, right? There's marketing owns a number kind of thing, which pushes everything in the right direction. But what I've often seen, and I'm still seeing, is where marketing owns the number, but actually only 2 people in marketing own the number. The rest of the marketing department continues as business as usual. The 2 people in the department being the demand gen team. And then the rest of the team doesn't own that number. So the CMO owns the number and passes it right down to some demand gen person. But the rest of the marketing organization may or may not feel as if they have a number 2, or as well, let me say. Well, I think that's inherently unfair and misses the point. And I suppose a couple of other demand gen people listening to this might agree. And a couple of CMOs listening to this might go, yeah, but what's the alternative? So that's a question for another day, because I've already taken up my time here today. I appreciate your answer. Thank you very much.
Yeah, great discussion, David. Anyone, Tori, anyone else want to weigh in on any other things that they've seen that are, have changed from 2019 to now? Any trends they're seeing? Feel free to just raise your hand. We'll get some people off mute.
David put me on the spot there, so I had to kind of rock my brain. But I think a lot of the changes that I'm seeing over the past few months are really content related. I think you're starting to see a lot of companies kind of lean into. I see three things that are just gaining in popularity and effectiveness. The first one being kind of like we'll call it founder-led content, which Chris, you've been doing a great job spearheading over the past few years, seeing more and more like CEOs really starting to get the message and take a big part in the content strategy, even something that like is centralized around they and their expertise, their founder story. The other one I think is like the influencers and key opinion leaders. Again, that's nothing that's terribly new, but you're starting to see companies really do it the right way. Not just like find someone that has a big following, but understanding the relevance of their following and their message to the target ICP, and not forcing those people to just kind of like post or recite a script, but rather kind of do things the way they've been doing already that got them to the point where they have this following. And just putting a little bit of a spin on it to kind of help, some of these companies amplify their message a little bit. And then the last one I think would be like around event strategies. So again, something that you've been talking about for a while, Chris, but like not just going to these events with an intention of collecting badge scans, but rather turning the event presence into its own content creation arm. And I think that's a huge benefit to like not just the presence that you have at that event and your ability to interact with your ICP in ways you might not have previously, but it's also a great way to like realize a little bit more value from those events. So it's not just dollars in, dollars out, all based upon like how many badge scans and hand raisers you get at the show itself. So like, yeah, I'd say those three things to me have been really popping up more and more recently, like just on LinkedIn and the like. And I think that companies are really starting to get that message. CEOs are starting to get that message, and they're really leaning into it and doing it well.
Right on. Awesome insights, man. Thanks for sharing that stuff. Nathan was pumped up as you went through that. I could see. Cool. Love the energy. Sydney, we got like one more to round it out. Maybe two.
Yeah. So this question was pre-submitted, but it's about SDRs. So we're bringing back a little bit. Marina asked, her senior leadership follows Chris Walker's opinions closely, and she's an SDR leader. She's obviously sensitive to a lot of what you've been mentioning, but her question for you is any tips on how to ensure her team and her become indispensable in the org? FYI, our marketing team is really small. The website's being optimized, and our SDRs are being repurposed to go outbound and not focus on like working inbound intent raisers.
All right, here we go. This will be for Marina and for every SDR leader out there. The number one thing that you can do to make your team indispensable is to focus on the signals that drive your SDR team to take action and the outcomes of those signals, and then prioritizing all the ones that actually work, instead of just having random outreach to random people and not tracking the actual outcomes of it. And when you have the data, then you're going to know how many SDRs do we actually need? How can we perform at this so we get 3x in revenue for every dollar we spend on SDRs? What are the places where we're wasting so much time and human capital on things that are definitely not working? And how do we just cut all those things? And so if you are the SDR leader, and you're responsible for all signals, including hand raisers, you could just sort them. And you could say, okay, so at the top, we have demo requests, pricing requests, contact, webinar attendee, and then you work your way down. Toward the bottom, you have ebook download, Zoom info cold list pull. You probably have some intent data that's happening down there, and on and on and on. And you can just go and look at the bottom and say, all these things have terrible sales velocity and terrible win rates. Let's just cut them. And then what happens when you cut all the things where your sales team's taking thousands of actions and getting no results? Your team gets way more productive, and typically you need less headcount because it's not bloated anymore. And so as an SDR leader, we need to be focused on the data, specifically the signal and then the outcome of the signals, as well as communicating back to the company. What is the impact of this investment? Are we over-invested and we have low efficiency and low ROI? Or are we under-invested and we could get much more results at an appropriate ROI if we increased headcount or technology or things like that? And so having the data and then treating your department as if it's a business case and being able to collect that data and make strong decisions and treat that investment like it was your own money, to me, that is how you make an outbound team indispensable. And in the future, not right now, I wouldn't recommend this to you right now, but in the future, I think that people are going to start to try and figure out, how do we get AI to do the things better than what a human does when we think about a cold email and somebody submits a demo request and has to go through processing and get enriched, and then all of a sudden it gets into somebody's queue and it's a non-time sensitive MQL. So then all of a sudden, by the time they follow up, it's been 4 hours, that an AI bot could do that better and immediately to a customer and actually accomplish the goal of booking the meeting much faster. I think that it'll need some time to play out, but I think that a lot of the future low value SDR manual work specific to that will be augmented and or replaced by AI.
All right, just cut that, clip that, post that. That was a great segment for all the SDR leaders.
Boom.
We have one final question. So we've got a couple minutes left. And this one's from Emily. So I'm going to go ahead and bring her on.
Hello.
Hey, Emily.
Hi. Thanks for having me on. So I work for a very large SaaS tech company in financial tech, and we do a lot of events, corporate events, not necessarily hosted events on our own. I wish we went that way, but we do a lot of booth buy, big sponsorships, things like that. And the biggest response I get when we say no to an event is that if we don't go, somebody will think something's wrong, or they'll think we're struggling. So I just really kind of wanted to hear your response to that.
Yep. Have heard this story since like 2014 as I campaigned against the low ROI of a trade show booth and how that money could be better deployed to get a better return on the investment for companies. And it's always, well, if we don't show up, then they're going to just all go to our competitor's booth, or they're going to think that we don't have enough money and we're going to go out of business and they'll never think about us again, and blah, 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 blah. The same thing, assumptions and stuff that I hear from people when they say, oh, my audience is professional. They don't use Facebook. My customer would never use TikTok. They just want to have a sales rep come in and talk to them just like the old days and just be their friend and sell them some stuff. And it's just a bunch of assumptions and subjective opinions about what your customer wants and what they think, instead of actually getting the real information. And so the comp to this, or not even the comp, it's like the answer to this is that our customers should be seeing us every day digitally, not once a year at the trade show.
Yeah.
That executives at our company post on LinkedIn, that we run proper media against connected TV and LinkedIn cold and retargeting on Instagram and Meta, and maybe we throw in YouTube if our audience is there. We have an organic distribution strategy that we go through email and through a podcast. Our YouTube Shorts videos show up in Google search. We produce customer stories on our website that people might search and find, or our customers might share. And our target market sees us every fucking day instead of once a year at the trade show. Then the conversation's over of they're going to think we're in trouble and they're not going to remember us, right? And it's so companies that are very, very invested in events is to compensate that their digital strategy is ineffective or they don't invest enough there. And recognizing that if they rebalance the budget and figured out the digital strategy, that one, their events would work way better, and two, they could spend way less on them and therefore get a much better ROI. That's like the general sentiment around that response. Will everybody be like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea, Chris. Let's do that. Let's cut our trade show booth expenditures from $13 million to $8 million next year. No, most people aren't going to do that. But if you're able to siphon some money, like what we do is we basically sort and we try to find the worst performing investments in the events bucket. And if you do a lot of events, it will be clear. There are like certain categories of events or certain geographies or certain actual like specific events that have very low ROI for multiple years at a time. And if you just took that part and said, okay, we're just not going to go to the worst 5 shows next year, all of a sudden you got $1.5 million that you can go and then have work to figure out some of the things that I just talked about digitally. And then as those things start to prove out, you're able to siphon more off. And it's just it's not a overnight, especially at a big company, it's not an overnight rebalancing act. You almost have to like prove out the other part of it before you start siphoning funds away from it without creating, I used to say creating risk in the business, but it's actually creating perceived risk. Like most companies, they could cut if they spend $10 million or more on events or Google SEM or something like that, they could cut 50% of it and probably feel no impact. But their perceived risk of cutting that is very high. They're like, oh my God, we can't cut any money from Google. We need that to hit our plan. Meanwhile, the data down there is like this $4 or $5 million a year is doing pretty much nothing for you. So it's more about the perceived risk, just like what you said, the opinion that if we're not there, that our customers are going to think that we don't exist. I think we just need to have a lot more objectivity and a lot more customer insights in order to make those decisions, particularly in like my customer doesn't use that platform type of thing. I've been hearing that nonsense for like 10 years now. That if you ask them, they would tell you almost the exact opposite of what you think that they think. The buyer, same thing happens in buyer personas, same thing happens about what platforms people use, same thing happens about how they think about a trade show or an event. Let's be real. Almost every one of your target market is not going to that conference to see your company. They're not even interested. They're there to see their peers, to see a couple of sessions, to go check out a new city, to get a couple paid days off of work and take a little vacation. Like that's to go to the parties. Like that's why they're at the conference. They're not coming there to see your booth. They can come to your webinar. They can go to your website. They can talk to their peers. There's so many other ways that they would prefer to learn about your company than stumble upon your booth.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Because I've always tried to kind of go the ROI route, but it's really hard when you have a long sales cycle to prove that it's not working, that the ROI is not there, or that it is there. So you kind of build that story in twofold of the ROI, and then also making sure SMEs or we are talking to our customers more often, and SMEs are out there getting the word out in different ways. So
yeah. I mean, if the company was really concerned about our customers not knowing that we exist, then they should be doing like a webinar, big event every single week with somebody who's an expert that is communicating directly to their customers. It's almost like the fear doesn't actually drive any different action. The fear of the perceived risk is actually used to not change rather than to change, which I find fascinating.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Awesome event again. Love the participation. Love everyone was here. I might who knows? I might do this show next week on a treadmill and just take it from Ryan and give it a shot up there. Cause yeah, you probably got like 250 calories in there and a boatload of steps. So kudos to you. Yeah. You got the dad bod, you got to work that thing off, get the 6-pack coming for the summer. All right, everyone. Thanks a lot for being here. Great discussion. We'll be back here again next week. Can't wait to see you all. See you soon. Bye.